Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Thoughts for Change Makers. It's a LinkedIn Live as well. You can find it on YouTube. And this is a place where we challenge the status quo. We elevate performance and foster exponential growth. And today, I'm thrilled to host Mel Kettle. So, Mel Kettle is an internationally recognized expert at fully connected leadership and communication. With more than 2 decades of experience, Mel is a valuable asset to leaders and teams that want to achieve real connection and sustained engagement. Who want that in this world that we are living in now? With all the technology, all the digital disruption, we are still human, right? So connection, real human connection. And she is the author of 2 books. One and the latest one that I read is called Fully Connected. So today we'll talk about, yes, that's it. That's the one. And so today, so you can find it, on where you can find books, right, Mel?
Yes, that's right. If you want a signed copy, just go to my website, the melkettle.com.
Wonderful. It's going to be shipped from Sunshine Coast. So maybe you can
It will be.
have a taste of the sea from this beautiful part of Queensland, Australia.
It might even have some sand.
Yes. So I like to ask a question to most of my guests because I know in advance that all the answers are different. So, Mel, what is the definition of individual performance for you?
Oh, it's such a good question. And for me, individual performance is about having a level of self-awareness, prioritizing self-care, and knowing who you are and what motivates you so that you can take action to achieve your goals. And at the end of the day, it comes down to being connected with yourself. So how do you connect with yourself so that you can then connect better with others?
I love it. And I guess that's how the title of the book came, like fully connected. Connect with yourself and
Yep.
then you can connect with others. Because if you're not connected with yourself, what can be the impact of connection with others if you're not fully connected with yourself?
Yeah, exactly. And, I work with a lot of leaders and teams, and I work with them to help them communicate, to create real connection and sustained engagement. And I found over the many years I've been doing this work that leaders need to lead themselves so they thrive. They lead teams that are aligned, and they lead cultures of belonging. But if you don't lead yourself first, then you're not going to have anywhere near as much impact or influence over teams and culture.
Yes. And is it easy? Because it seems like, oh, you can be fully connected with yourself. Like, is it something easy? Because it sounds very simple, but is it easy?
Not usually, I think, is
Yeah.
the short answer. A lot of people think that they're connected with themselves, but they really aren't. And it's like I've been reading Tasha Ehrlich's book on insight, and she talks about how most people believe that they have a really good level of self-awareness, but the reality is most people don't. And it's the same with how comfortable we are with being alone with our thoughts and our feelings. Like when I'm reading Carrie Sackville's book at the moment, which is about being alone and with your thoughts. And one of the things she says is, how comfortable are you when you're being truly alone, and not alone when you're listening to a podcast or when you're watching TV, but alone with nothing except your thoughts and your emotions and your feelings. And a lot of us run from that. And most of us, are not comfortable with not having some kind of stimulation to distract us from what we genuinely think and feel, because it's doing that. It's taking time to review and reflect on our feelings and our emotions that's hard, and that can be confronting. And so I feel like it can be it should be easy to be fully connected with ourselves, but the work that you need to do to get there is can be quite challenging and confronting, particularly if it's something that you've never thought of or never really had to do before.
And also that's something that maybe we haven't been taught on how to do it or why we should do it
I
at
think
school.
potentially, yes. But, I look at my generation, I'm Gen X, and older generations. When I was growing up, we had a TV. We had one TV in our household, and we didn't have a TV for part of my childhood. And so there was a lot of time spent alone with my thoughts. And mum and dad would say, just make your own fun. And sometimes you just got bored. And I feel like today there's not a lot of opportunity for boredom, because that we can be distracted with our phones, we can be watching Netflix. It's always something we can be doing. And it's not until you have time for boredom and time alone without distractions that we actually start processing our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions. So while we're not often taught how to do that, I feel that often today we don't provide ourselves with the opportunities to do that. So I ask you and the other people who are watching and listening, when was the last time you were alone without technology? When was the last time you went for a walk or did some kind of exercise without listening to a podcast or listening to music or having a conversation with somebody? When was the last time you lay on the grass and stared at the sky and imagined things in the clouds, or looked at the stars, or spent time truly alone without, where you could think through and just have random ideas and thoughts pop into your head? And I know for me, it's been a long time.
Yeah. In fact, for me, I love to do it because I realize that the more I get bored, the more creative I can become for my life, for my business. But last week, I went into a sauna, and someone was listening to a podcast within the sauna with their phone. And, as an ex-engineer, like IT and electronic, I was like, but the components of the phone will melt. And so as well, like, sometimes in the sauna, that's also a time for you to be able to reflect or to connect with strangers and then to create connection. But no, even like, not only in the car or in public transport that we get with our phone, even now with the sauna. In the sauna, we get with our mobile devices.
Yeah. I don't understand why you would take your phone into a sauna. Like, what about all that moisture? Wouldn't that wreck it? It's not a risk I'd be taking. But you're so right. Like, we used to have a family holiday house that was in an area that had no phone reception and really sketchy internet reception. And it was fantastic because I would go there every year for a couple of weeks just to get away from everything. And it was up to me when I chose to go into the village to make phone calls or to, check my emails. And that week, that time I was there, I would always come home just buzzing with ideas because there was no expectation of me to do things. I didn't have as many distractions. And while I'd always read a lot of books, I always had a lot of time going for walks and being alone. And I really miss that. And so I'm actually going to Melbourne in a couple of weeks for a week where my husband's not coming, and I'm going down to get this surge of creativity or to have a creative holiday. And I'm taking some books, I'm taking some notebooks, I'm planning on seeing a lot of art and eating a lot of good food. And I'm definitely have some friends and some clients that I'm keen to catch up with, but I'm limiting that to just one activity with people a day for, an hour or two, so I can hopefully have a lot of time alone with my thoughts and getting inspired about, and just time to reflect. I feel that we don't take time to reflect anymore on what has happened in the last, day, week, month, year, and what we want to have happen to us. Like, you make your own future. So what do you want to achieve? What are your goals and your hopes and your dreams? And what do you need to do to put that into place? And because we're all so busy, they're things that we often don't prioritize, which means you can look back at a year and go, I had all these dreams and goals and I didn't ever achieve any of them because I didn't articulate them, write them down, make them a priority.
And I had a metaphor that popped up in my mind when you were talking about your creative trip in Melbourne and how it's gonna happen. It's about like you have like a cup, you know. It's about the tea bag. Like, you know, when you have it, like when you go into a cup, you put a tea and tea bag. It's you go up and down, up and down. But at some stage, maybe you just stop, and then the tea bag is slowly like diffusing, you know, the taste within the water. And I think it's
I
the
like
same
that.
with, and then it's become like the drink, the beverage is it's tastier. And I think it's also coming back to how you're gonna be more fully connected. It's coming back to you are expanding your connection with yourself. So ultimately you will be like a beam, and you will spread energy around you, and so people will notice that you are fully connected, and they don't know what is happening to you, but they might want the same thing that you are doing, right? Do you see that
Exactly.
with leaders?
I do see that. And I feel that so often one of the things I'm going into this week in Melbourne with is a sense of curiosity. So what am I going to do? What am I going to see? I've asked in a Facebook group I'm in, I've asked the members of the group for some ideas about things I can do. But mostly I've just said to them, what's on? What are some art galleries I can go to? What are some exhibits that are on? What are some new things and activities? And I've just thought, okay, so they've given me all of these suggestions, and there were probably half a dozen suggestions where my immediate reaction was, no, that's not for me. And thinking about it, it's like, actually, they're probably some of the things that I should do because they're outside of my normal behavior and activity. And so by going in and thinking, this is not normally for me, but I'm curious about it, I could learn something. I'm still not skydiving, but we had that conversation earlier. For anybody wondering about that comment, I'm not about to skydive, but I could go to an exhibition at an art gallery of an artist that I might not normally go to because I think I'm telling myself that I don't like that kind of art. But the reality is, do I really know enough about that kind of art to make that informed choice? Or am I just making a decision based on other things? Like, before the World Cup, I would have said I don't like soccer. But now I've been watching every match because I do like it. I just didn't think I did because I didn't like it when I was a kid because I had to go to watch my brother play, and that was really boring because I was 8 and there were other things I'd rather do. So I've been telling myself a story since I was 8 that I don't like soccer, but I really just didn't like 6-year-old boys playing soccer because that was really boring for 8-year-old me. And so one of the ways we can become more connected with ourselves is by questioning the stories that we tell ourselves. If we tell ourselves, I don't like this, or I'm not this kind of person, or this isn't me, where does that come from? Does that come from something that happened in our childhood, or does it come from something that is more recent where you're making a decision based on an experience that you've had recently? And so the question is, how do you change the story?
And as well, I would like to add something in what you said is like being curious is great because definitely, you know, with all the experience you go through life, what you didn't like maybe in the past might have changed because you had other experiences. And that maybe, as you mentioned with the soccer as well, what's coming in the world, that yes, you can like it. And so curiosity, and then adding, I like to say audacity, like taking action about it. So are you going to this museum or this art thing that maybe before you would not go to, but so you are starting to be curious about it. But then, are you audacious enough? And then you will be doing it, because then you will learn something. And I think as well, a lot of people, we are wearing like blinkers about how we see our life, what we should do, and we are not learning things cross industries.
Mm.
Do you see what I
Yep.
mean? um,
Yeah.
and in fact, that's could be so much beneficial to learn about. I don't know, if you work in the IT industry, that you learn a bit more about
Mm.
what they are doing in the retail industry, or whatever, because you might take stuff that they are doing that might be like fast track your success ultimately. Yeah.
Absolutely agree with you. So when I first moved to Brisbane, I moved from Sydney to Brisbane in 2000. And my first job when I moved to Brisbane was marketing manager of the Brisbane Festival, which is a big performing arts festival. And what was really interesting for me and for everybody in the arts community in Brisbane is that this interloper, me, was given this job that was highly competitive. And I had no experience in working in the arts, and I was not from Brisbane. I'd barely even been to Brisbane. And when my boss was criticised for hiring me and was told, but she isn't even from Brisbane and she has no arts experience, her response was, that is exactly why I hired her, because she brings a fresh perspective and she doesn't have the jaded view that other candidates might have by having lived and grown up in Brisbane and only ever worked in our industry. She's got great experience. She clearly loves the arts because of how she spends her private time going to the ballet and the opera and the theatre. But because she hasn't worked in that space and because she doesn't know the players in Brisbane, she comes with a different view. And, we were a hugely successful festival that year, and everything that I produced and my team produced was really different to anything that had been produced in the past, because I didn't have that view of we can just do the same again. And so I think that's really important for employers and leaders to look at. Who are you putting into your team? Are you putting little replicas of yourself? And we know that like highs like, or are you going out on a limb and bringing in somebody else who might not be, who might not seem like the obvious choice, but they've got the skill set and they've got the personality to be the right cultural fit, but they might not have the specific industry experience. So how do you take that chance, or do you just go with the same old and not think about what could be?
Yeah. That what you are saying, it's music to my ears, because I'm obsessed with how people think, and studies as well show it, that the more cognitive diverse as a team you have, the more high performing you will be as a team. And so
Yeah.
if you bring people that think differently, that have different heuristic of life, and that when they face like a problem or a decision to make, and their thought process is different from each other, then they will complement each other. They will be able to highlight each other's blind spots, and they will perform better. But
Yeah,
that can also
absolutely.
create
Absolutely.
friction. Yeah.
And the other thing is, we all have biases in life. And if you say you don't have any biases, then that's a bias that you have because you don't believe you do. And the more we can be aware of our bias, and the more we can learn about it and learn why we think the way we do. And, our biases come from our upbringing and our education and our experiences. And there's nothing wrong with your bias as long as you're aware that you've got it. And so you can temper decisions with that umbrella of knowing I might not make the right decision. So think about how do you educate yourself about your bias as well, and use that to make smarter choices.
And coming back, to this fully connected self-leadership, what do you see out there? We say it might not be so easy, but what are the first things that you would advise people in this journey? Like if they say, okay, I realized maybe I'm not a very good communicator. I'm not like
Mm,
a good influencer. Maybe I'm having some issue with my team as a leader. So let's look in the mirror, and then what things would you
mm.
chat
I
with
think
them about?
the first thing, that you need to think about is how can you, how self-aware are you? And when I say that, I mean, how do you see yourself? And is that how other people see you? And one of the ways that you can increase your self-awareness or confirm that you have a good level of self-awareness is to ask people, how would they describe you? What are 3 words that they would use to describe you? And it can be very confronting asking that question, but it can give you some interesting responses. Another thing you can do is you can ask for feedback. So feedback is one of those things that fills a lot of people with fear because, again, our negative bias takes over and we assume that feedback can only be negative. But feedback should be a learning and a growth opportunity. So if you're in a leadership position, or if you're not even in a leadership position, but when was the last time you asked for feedback in a way that can help you make positive change if you need to, or reaffirm that you're on the right track with what you're doing? So whether it's asking your boss or your colleague or somebody that you're doing a project with, or even your partner, saying to your partner, are there things that I could be doing in our relationship to make it better? And having a conversation about that. And it's a really difficult, confronting, challenging thing to do, because you need to be prepared to hear things that are going to make you feel awkward. But it's such a great way of increasing your personal level of self-awareness. And then when you're self-aware, you have much more capacity to practice better self-care and to have a clear understanding, or a clearer understanding, of your values and your priorities, and put boundaries in place so that you can achieve them.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, sometimes when you are self-aware, you know what's triggering you, and then you can really react and put boundaries. Tell me more about boundaries, because I think people are not using them enough nowadays.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I'm love boundaries, and one of the reasons I think so many people are burnt out and exhausted and overwhelmed is because they don't have healthy boundaries in place. They don't have boundaries around when they work. They don't have boundaries around how they spend their time. They don't have
Mm,
boundaries around when they go to bed and when they get up. And you don't need to have boundaries around everything, although it would be
mm,
great if you did. But, pick an area of your life that needs some improvement, or
mm,
that you're most frustrated by, and
mm,
maybe look at things like, I really value family, but I don't have enough time with my kids. Or I
mm,
really value health and well-being, but I don't
mm,
have time to exercise. You
mm.
do. You do have time to do those things. You're
Yes.
just not prioritizing them,
Mm,
and you don't have clear enough boundaries in place to prevent the other things from taking the time away from the things that are most important to you. And so boundaries are like I describe boundaries as being like all of the things that you want to do are in a field, and there's a fence around it. And so there's a gate in the fence, and sometimes you might need to open that gate to do something that you don't want to do, or to spend time with somebody who you don't really want to spend time with, but
mm,
there's greater good there. So an example is, I don't have meetings before 10 a.m. And I
mhm,
haven't had meetings before 10 a.m. pretty much since I started my business 17 years ago, because I'm not a
mm,
morning person. My natural wake up time is between 7:30 and 8. In the
mm,
morning, I have a morning routine that involves cups of tea, reading a book, going for a walk, and having breakfast. And those things
mm.
take time.
Yeah.
Having said that, I do sometimes have meetings before 8 a.m., before 10 a.m. And, sometimes I'll have a meeting at 7 a.m. if it's with somebody who I'm really keen to have a conversation with or work with. or a client that I've agreed to who's in another time zone, and that's the best time for them. So, I'm certainly not so rigid that I say no. There's times that I just open that gate and make an exception. But it's my choice. And that's the thing about a healthy boundary. You can let it slip sometimes because it's your choice. There's been times where I've booked out many, many meetings in my calendar before, 10 a.m., 9 a.m., 8 a.m. And I've gotten to the end of a week or the end of a month and I've been really frustrated and I've been really exhausted because I haven't prioritized that time for me to set myself up for the day. And I know that if I don't do my morning routine or some version of it, and I've got a few different versions, then the rest of the day is not going to go as easily as it otherwise could be.
Yeah. Everyone is enjoying it. We had some people writing some comment like Adekunle. And also, I was wondering if you are seeing that out there. So it's people have hard time to say no.
Yeah. So one of my favorite quotes is by Paulo Coelho, and he says, every time you say yes to somebody else, you're saying no to yourself. And so have a think about, why are you saying yes to things that are not an immediate hell yes? Is it because you feel obligated, or is it because you don't want to be seen as a meanie, or is it because of some other reason? And, sometimes there are times in life where you just have to say yes to things that you've got zero interest in saying yes to. But a lot of the time, I feel one of the reasons we're so busy is because we so often say yes to things that we really don't want to do, and we're saying yes out of that sense of obligation. So one of the things about having boundaries is work out where you want that boundary to be, create a boundary for yourself and tell yourself, I'm not going to do this thing, or I am going to do this thing, or I'm going to prioritize this thing. And then you have to communicate it. You have to be communicating that boundary to the relevant people with clarity, with consistency, and with compassion. And you, particularly when you say no to people, compassion is really critical, because you don't want people to think badly of you, or you probably don't. Maybe you don't care. And yeah, learning to say no, it does sound a lot easier than it can be. But, if you're wanting to, so I've got a friend who would always have parties where the expectation was that you would go and you would just drink until you fell over. And I'm not a big alcohol drinker, and so those parties were not a good time for me. And I went to a couple because I just thought maybe it'll be different this time. And now whenever she invites me, I just say, I'd love to catch up with you, but I'm not drinking right now. And so it won't be, I'm just not interested in being around people who are going to have a lot of alcohol. And so if you don't mind, well, whether you do mind, I don't really care, but I'm not coming. And the thing with saying no is, a lot of the time we try to make up excuses and justify our no, but no is a no. You can just say no, or you can just say, no, I'm at capacity, or no, I'm not interested, or no, it's not for me. It can be hard to say no to your boss at work. So if your boss is giving you tons of work and you feel overloaded, one way you can say no is by saying, I've got a lot on right now. Can we have a conversation about what are the priorities? What do you see as the priorities? And then I can focus on those.
And what I see, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, learning to say no in a way that people respect is a really critical skill that we all need to have.
Yeah.
One of my clients said to me a few years ago, he said, I've just realized you say no to me all the time, and I did not even realize that, because you say it in such a way that is kind and gracious and doesn't make me feel rejected. And so learn how to say no in that way. I've got I've got a free resource on my website. If you
Okay.
just go to melkettle.com/boundaries, there's a checklist that is a series of examples that might indicate you need to create boundaries. And there's also 11 ways you can say no. So have a look at, if you're interested in learning how
Go
to say no,
now.
then go to that.
'Cause, yeah, and as well,
melkettle.com/boundaries.
melkettle.com/boundaries. And what I see as well, people don't say no, or they don't even reply, or they just ghost you. But then it's opening a mental tab on both sides, on between two people. And
Yeah.
it's like when you open your web browser, you have all those tabs open. And because you don't say either yes or no, then you have all those mental tabs that are like accumulating in the back of your head. So say no as well for your mental health, for your peace. It's not even, and the other person as well, this mental tab is still open for them. So they can say thank you because you were decisive. You're able to say which position you are taking.
Yeah, absolutely. I get a lot of invitations to things, and I have for a long time since being in business. And I learned that if I get an invitation and it's something that is a definite no for whatever reason, is it a no because I've got another commitment? Is it a no because I'm just not interested? Then I respond immediately and say no. If it's a definite yes, again, I respond immediately and say yes. If it's a I really don't know, then I'll put it in my diary. And there's
Yeah.
some things that I'd love to go to,
Yeah, of
but I
course.
might have something else on that I need to get out of,
Yeah.
or
And you need some time to think
I'm
about it.
just
Yeah.
not sure. Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
going to be, it might be a cost, it might be in a different city, it might be something that I want to say yes to, but I've got to consider other factors. Then I'll just pop a date in my diary before the RSVP date or before the event as a reminder to go back and
Yeah.
confirm that thing. So an example, our local Chamber of Commerce in Caloundra runs evening events, business catch-ups in the evening, and there's one on next week. And I've had it in my diary as a placeholder, and I just wasn't sure whether I could go or not. And they rang me yesterday and said, tickets are selling. I know you like to come to these. Don't forget, ticket sales close off on Friday. And I said, thanks for the reminder. It's been in my diary. I'll confirm either way tomorrow morning once I've had a chat to see whether my husband, who works in my business, wants to come as well. And so I booked it this morning.
Okay.
But that's, something that I was not a definite yes, and I wasn't a definite no. I was interested, but I just wasn't sure if I was going to be here to go.
Yes.
So those kinds of things, that's fine. But if you know definitively yes or no, let people know. There's nothing worse than inviting people to things and not hearing back.
Yes.
So rude. So rude.
Yes.
One of my cousins did an RSVP to my brother's wedding. Who does that? How rude was that? I know. I know. Mm-hmm.
And I think the digital transformation is not helping with that, because now it's easy to ghost people, to not talk to people face to face, to maybe send them a small text, and not to take the time. Like yesterday, I called someone and they were surprised that I called them. Like they sent me a text and I called them. It was, oh, you're calling me. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Like they were expecting a SMS in return, and I was like, no, I'm taking the time to call you.
Yeah. But if I call someone and ask them something and they send me a text in response, it's like, why didn't you pick up the phone? That's really irritating. Really irritating.
Anyway, so thank you. So I think we have a lot. We did cover a lot, about being like fully connected, why it matters, why it sounds simple, but it's not that easy, and what are the first steps to do. So you have access to Mel boundaries on her website. And can we finish on a like once you see leaders that are fully connected, what are the results you see with those people that put the work into it, into the connection to know themselves, to know their value, to know what they stand for, to speak with conviction? And then what are the things they are able to achieve? Because this is a life for change makers. So people watching that, they want to make change happen. So what are the results? What do you see? Like for me, when sometimes I have goosebumps when I see like a change maker, when I see like a leader that is fully connected, I have goosebumps when I hear them talking.
They have an energy about them, and they have well, when you're fully connected, you're happier and you're healthier, and you are more human. And by being more human, I mean you're much more likely to show up with authenticity and vulnerability and this sense of self-confidence that is really compelling and attractive. And so when you have those characteristics, your people that you're leading, whether it's at work or at home or in your community, they listen more to you and they want what you've got. And so you have a much greater capacity for influencing them and motivating them and educating them, which has positive benefits for teams and cultures and organizations. So just think about, what's one little thing that you can do to become more connected with yourself? What's one little change that you could make? Because it's not, it might seem daunting, but it's small steps and it's one thing at a time. So, think about what's one thing that you could do today to progress your fully connectable self.
Yeah, and share it with us in the comment when you watch either this live or the recording. I would love to know, what are you doing today to be more fully connected with yourself so that you can have those results in your, as you mentioned, in your family life, in your community, or even at work, whatever.
Absolutely.
So
I'd love to know too.
Yeah. So that's a wrap up. Is there anything else you want to leave the change makers with? Something like, I guess we gave them already an action to go for.
Yeah. Only to say, if you want more information about any of the work I do, or if you want to get in touch and have a chat, all my contact details are through my website, melkettle.com, and you're very welcome to connect on LinkedIn as well, if that's where you're watching this. And I'd love to hear how you go.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you, Mel, for being with us today. And we wish you the best. Keep making a dent out there. Bye for now.
Oh, thanks, Lizanne. See you soon. Bye.